Well, on this podcast, we welcome to the program Blaine Wilhour. He is a state representative from Southern Illinois. And Blaine, you guys are down in Springfield right now. This is ostensibly supposed to be the final week of session. They backed it up from the end of May to the first week of April because, well, it's a political season. People got to get out and get to the doors. And there's nothing the Democrats like better than to, talk to their constituents about what they've done or not done.
Right. That's absolutely right, Jeannie. And well, you nailed it right there. Talk to what they've done or not done, and or make them think that they're doing something. That's mostly what we do here. We call it politics for press releases. You know, inflation is going crazy because of the policies that they've put in place and the shutdowns that they did over the past 2 years, and just generations of bad economic policy in this state, but they don't want to deal with any of that. I mean, working people in this state are getting hammered, the blue collar people in my district and everywhere else, and then extending far beyond that at this point. So, we do a bunch of stuff here to try to make people believe that we care or make people believe that we're actually dealing with big issues, but we never deal with big issues because as well as I do, Jeannie, if you're going to deal with big issues in this state, you're going to have to go head to head with the powerful special interest groups, and they don't want any part of that because they're basically sustaining most of these people's existence, and that's in both parties. And you know that all too well. It's really embarrassing, and it's insulting to the voters. And we've got to get some new people in down here that are ready to do the tough things.
Well, it is remarkable. I will tell you, we caught the first lie today, and that is Laura Ellman, state senator, lying about being pro-police and pro-funding the police after she voted for that horrific Safety Act that basically, abolished all sorts of police protections and made them very vulnerable to lawsuits and just a threat to their own safety because they couldn't use particular methods of use of force. And then they're just lying. She's just out there lying. I'm sorry, a small amount of money for mental health for police does not negate what you voted for a year ago. And, this escalating crime thing is a problem for them. They know it. So now they're lying. They're just flat out lying in that Facebook ad.
Yeah, I mean that's what they do here, and it's really, really insulting, and that's why why our party's got to be so much better than what they have been. Number one, we've got to be strong enough to stand up to this stuff, and number two, we got to do a lot better job of letting the folks in our districts know what the heck is really, really going on, because that was one of the things that was really important to us core group of Southern Illinois legislators that came in here in 2019. If we were going to do nothing else, we were going to shine a light on things. We were going to be bold. We were going to stand up, and we're going to make sure that the people in our districts, number one, know where we are and where we're from, and number two, know what's going on. Because when people see what's going on here, the lies, the misdirections, the just, disrespect for the voters and the citizens of this state, they're not going to like it, and they're going to stand up. But we've just got to give people a compelling reason to stand up on our side, because they're not doing anything to help or promote public safety. Every piece of legislation that they do is always about punish the police. It's always about their press releases and everything else. Nothing gets to the root causes. You want to solve crime in the inner cities and even in our rural areas and everywhere else. Solve the opportunity problem in the state of Illinois. They've destroyed opportunity through generations of poor public policy in our inner city areas and our poor rural areas. They've driven everything away. You solve that problem, you're going to go a long ways to solving the crime problem. It's not going to be by punishing the police. I can tell you that.
No, you're absolutely right. Like that, we just need to to invest in these communities that need help and find these people jobs and see them through it and mentor them correctly. And let them, give them an opportunity to turn away from crime. We're not getting that through the educational system. But I'll tell you what, it does. Here's one thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure that you have too. It doesn't matter if you're a downstate Democrat, and there's a handful of them still around. And it doesn't matter if you're a suburban Democrat, and there's plenty of those to go around. They vote just like they're a Chicago Democrat. There is literally no daylight between the two at all. They are one huge cabal against the taxpayers. And, and freedom-loving people in this state. Not a single one of them reigned in Pritzker's power. There's no difference between any of their extreme bills, whether it's cultural or taxation-wise. They're all the same. They don't represent their districts. They represent their party, and they're the extreme parts of their party.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that Katie Stewart is the prototypical example of that.
Oh, yeah.
She's from the Metro East area, represents old steel mill towns like Granite City, Collinsville, Edwardsville, good working class people. She is the most radical representative in this place. You know, so you got a lot of Democrat representatives that are far out of step from what the people in their district actually are. But we've just got to be, you know, I keep going back to it, but we got to be strong enough to shine a light on it. You know, I mean, she was trying to
tell us about
resolution.
this. You kind of caught her in a conundrum, right? Tell us about what happened, and I'm going to pull that clip for our audience so that they can hear it. But tell us what happened on the House floor the other day.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think what she probably thought was going to be an innocuous resolution honoring the 50-year history of Title IX, but it had some stuff in there. And it kind of surprised me, Jeannie. I wasn't really.
You weren't looking to go after Katie Stewart on this.
Looking,
you weren't.
Yeah,
no, but you're like, hey.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the same Katie Stewart, just a little background. This is the same Katie Stewart who just last year who passed and strongly advocated for and presented on the floor the bill that did the gender-neutral bathrooms. And, you know, my good friend, your good friend Tom Morrison stood up and read some, you know, very legitimate headlines talking about, you know, perverts in girls' bathroom making recordings and stuff like that. And she came back and excoriated him on the floor for saying that it was inappropriate to have men in the women's bathroom.
Well,
so
on a a little sidebar on that, because it's now circulating around social media up in our area. And that's the fact that you now have grade school boys' bathrooms that have tampon machines in them. Mm-hmm. And this was legislation, of course, that Katie Stewart and her fellow Democrats voted for last year. So this is nonsense, science denying, stupid legislation. We're talking from if you're a school with fourth grade and above, you have to have tampon machines, feminine products machines for free in the boys' bathroom. Right. So that's the same Katie Stewart. Okay. So a little bit more context. So then you're debating this resolution on Title IX, which sounds good. Like we all agree women should have the same opportunities in school situations. We should have the ability to play sports at the same level. And then you get into this discussion about what?
Yeah, well, I just asked her if this was a resolution that was, you know, promoting or making possible or showing support for having biological males or biological females participating in sports for the other sex, and she got a little bit sideways on that part. Well, first I had her actually go through and define what the LGBTQI plus was, because I was ignorant on the I plus part at the end, so she was kind of triggered already. But then, you know, I asked her, the piece of legislation was obviously talking about women and support for women, so I just asked her what the definition of a woman was, and there was dead silence in there for about 10 or 15 seconds, and she was not happy about it, and she tried to insult me about it, but I just came back and said that, you know, hey, if we're going to be doing special legislation here for women, I think that it's appropriate to define what a woman was. And she went into some diatribe, but then she did finally, to her credit, define what she believes a woman is, and that's anybody who identifies as such. So, you know, you can't support Title IX on one hand and then destroy women's sports on the other hand. That's crazy. And people need to be called out for it, because I think that the vast majority of the population, the vast majority of Democrats even think that that's nuts. And these people need to be pushed back on. We're going on the offense on this stuff. You know, I'm not going to allow our culture I'm not going to just sit back and allow our culture to just go further down the tubes than what it already is. Because when it comes down to it, this is a small minority of people that are pushing a radical agenda and just trying to browbeat, with the help of the media and the political class and everybody else. They're just trying to browbeat anybody who opposes it. And I don't care. I don't care what they think of me. to be honest with you. And
That's right.
if I'm gonna pay a political consequence for standing up for girls' sports in face of this nonsense, then I don't want to be here anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, so you're right about that, and it just seems to me like the radical, progressive Democrats are the ones that they tend to elect. And I
Right.
honestly still believe that it's a fact that
That's where the money's
people don't
at.
know their records. They don't. Well, speaking of the records, every single one of these Democrats. I mean, we're talking Laura Ellman, uh, uh, Tara Costa Howard, Ann Stava Murray. I mean, literally 1.7, 1.8, 1.6 million dollars in support from the Democrat majority, which is Mike Madigan. They're only there because Mike Madigan put them there. And he's as corrupt as all get out. And that's the only reason they're sitting there is because millions of dollars have been spent by Mike Madigan, by other Democrats, and by the public sector unions to put these people in office. That's why they're there, because they put out these lies, they put out these ads, and they simply lie about their policies. They're just,
Exactly
it's
right.
ridiculous. And voters need to wake the hell up.
Yep. I'm with you 100%. And
Well,
in the face of all of that, we're drowning under epic corruption and everything else. We're a national disgrace. They still won't put any real anti-corruption measures in place in this place. It's a laughing stock.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So let's move on to just one other topic I wanted to cover with you, because it is the final week, supposedly, of session. First of all, one question is, do you really believe that session's over? Are you going to get a budget this week? And number two, what have you heard of a budget? Have you been involved in any working groups? Or are they just doing this behind closed doors and they're going to roll it out with a couple hours ahead of time before the vote? What's the plan?
They're starting to. I think they're actually starting to roll it out right now.
Okay.
And, no, you know how it goes. We've got our working groups, but then they take all of that and they just throw it in the trash can and do whatever the hell they want at the end. But there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that's misdirection. Again, trying to make the voters believe they're doing something, given $300 tax credits or something ridiculous after they've raised their taxes 200 times over the last 2 years. They'll give us enough to get about 2 tanks of gas maybe, and call it a victory, and say that they're going to say that we've got the first surplus in decades, which is a lot of obviously misdirection on that, because we're not properly funding our pensions or doing anything that structurally that we need to do, not to mention the fact that the coffers are full because the working class people are paying a hell of a lot more for the goods and services that they really need. So they're getting punished like they always do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when the gas price goes up, guess what? The taxes go up on the gas that you're paying for, because the sales tax is a percentage of what you're paying for the actual product. And so when prices go up, they make more in sales tax revenue. Hello.
Right. So JB's going to brag about the surplus, but it's a combination of huge amounts of federal money and inflation, which is the most cruel, regressive tax on working class, middle class people out here. So the voters aren't going to, they're not going to fall for this. But we need to have. We just, number one, JB Pritzker's got to go in November of 2022 here, and that's it. But it's gonna take bold, common sense leadership to do it. Lots of misdirection coming this week. So,
have they? Is it going to be though? I'm just curious. Are we going to have the largest budget in the history of the state of Illinois, even as we've had the largest outmigration amongst all states, practically the largest outmigration?
Yeah, well, we haven't seen the final numbers on it, but that's the big fight in the Democrat caucus right now. You got your members that are definitely in jeopardy because they've taken dumb votes throughout their entire careers, and their constituents are paying for it. Then you got the ultra progressive wing that's running the show here, that is pushing very hard to have the largest budget that we've ever had, and at a time where regular folks in Illinois are, struggling in a lot of ways because of the oppressive policies that we've lived under, especially since JB Pritzker got here. So that's the fight, and they're fighting it out on the floor over some of the stuff too. It's actually kind of entertaining to watch.
Well, for the third year in a row, are the Democrats going to vote for a pay raise for themselves?
Yeah, I think that's just a foregone conclusion
Yeah.
at this point, Jeannie. That they're gonna do that. They're not interested in doing anything different on that. They feel like they deserve it.
Well, hey, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Blaine, for coming on. That's Blaine Wilhour. He's a state Republican, solid conservative state representative from Central and Southern Illinois. We thank you for joining us. I know you've got to get back to work there. You're probably getting ready for caucus and some more votes on the House floor. So thank you so much for looking out for us. We feel like you represent us, even though we live in a different part of the state. We look to you for your leadership and your voice. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.